So this evening, it was suggested that we talk about finding God in the big city. And certainly that applies to most of the people that are watching tonight, or this morning, participating. Um, most of the world lives in big cities, and big cities have become increasingly, one might say, difficult to live in. You know, the traffic problems are ubiquitous in all large cities all around the world. India, certainly very, very difficult. The noise, the busyness, because of traffic and commuting to work and so on, people often have very long days, very stressful lives. And so there are certain kinds of pressures that one faces simply by living in a big city. I know that I enjoy getting up early in the morning, even here at Ananda Village, which is very quiet and probably as close to a pure sattvic environment as one can find. Even here, the thoughts of people, if you're sensitive, you can feel. And I know that sometimes I will wake up and begin meditating quite early, 3 or 4 in the morning. And when I do, I can feel a stillness that later on, as people are up and around and their busy thoughts begin to fill the atmosphere, that begins to evaporate. And even in the ancient teachings of India, they talk about certain still points during the day that are there because of the alignment of the sun, or so dawn and dusk, noon and midnight, traditionally have been thought of as points of stillness, where it's a little easier to go deeply. But the point here being is that in the big cities, the environment is not working for us. It is by and large working against us. Most of the people in those cities, if they're seeking God, it is not with a great deal of seriousness. I mean, obviously there are serious devotees, no matter where. But by and large, people are drawn to the cities because they're seeking something, generally success, generally a better income, somehow to rise in society. That's why people are drawn to the cities if they move there. Otherwise, they're born there, and they simply grow up and continue. Generally speaking, most people continue along relatively the same track as their parents. Not necessarily the same occupation, but in many ways the same kind of things. If their parents are laborers, they become laborers, generally speaking. If their parents are well educated, the parents see to it that the child is well educated. And so it is that we're kind of moving along. The world moves us along almost like on a conveyor belt. And on that conveyor belt, we, by and large, don't make a lot of choices until a certain kind of awakening comes within us. And when that happens, we realize that all of those things outward that we've been seeking in the city are not necessarily going to fulfill us. And yet we still, by and large, have responsibilities. So tonight we're going to address and talk about, tonight, I keep referring to tonight here in California. We're sitting, by the way, for those of you who are joining us, you're joining us in our living room. And so we're very happy to have you here. I know it's a big crowd to get into a little living room like ours, but through the magic of the internet, we're able to do it. So in any case, we want to explore how to balance a real dedication to our spiritual growth, along with the things that are necessary, the job and the pressures that we function under, all of those pressures in the city. So we'll explore that as we go on.
Okay, I'll share a few words too, and then we can start having more of a conversation. You know, Yogananda's world mission, the more I don't know, try to tune in, try to be a good disciple, try to study what he did in his life, the more I realize what an amazing thing he did and how it really is transforming, has the potential to transform the world. But that's where we all come in, because the great masters can come and they can give the most profound teachings, the most effective techniques for self-realization. But if people aren't motivated to follow the teachings, to practice the techniques, the mission of the masters will not be fulfilled. And so it is though we are the soldiers under the great spiritual general, Paramahansa Yogananda. And he took incarnation at this time because it was a pivotal point in human evolution in Dwapara Yuga. And, you know, you see how, when you look also at our line of gurus, Babaji and Lahiri meeting in the Himalayas and passing on Kriya for the first time in modern times, Lahiri asking the blessings of his guru, Babaji, can I give this to all sincere seekers who are struggling in a worldly life, people that can't have a complete renunciation. And Babaji gives his blessing. And then Lahiri lives the life of an ideal householder. Then comes Sri Yukteswar, just the fine edge of discrimination, honing Yogananda so that he could go to the West and endure what the West would present to him, because it was literally the Wild West when he came. Very little spiritual understanding. There was religion, but it was practiced by and large superficially. And then Master came, and he came, and in those short 32 years he had training people, it's not a long period to make a big impact, but my goodness, what an impact he had. And he came for suffering humanity, as Lahiri had begged Babaji, please let us, give this to suffering humanity, who people with worldly responsibilities, who nevertheless are seeking higher reality. And so here we all are as the recipients of this great, great gift of the understanding of the meaning of life, understanding of what the journey of the soul is, from just locked in egoic material consciousness to liberation, awareness of our soul unity with God, and being given these techniques of energization. We just were visiting with some of our guests at the Expanding Light, our yoga and meditation center. And one woman was telling me she was just visiting from the city, from San Francisco. She had been a manager of a big department store in San Francisco. And she said, I did those exercises that you were teaching, and I felt so much better. It was delightful to hear her talk about it. She said, I felt filled with energy. Those really work. And we know it from our own experience. We know how it invigorates the body, mind, and soul. But now we have to, how do we live it? How do we live it if we're living in a forest ashram, if we're living in the Himalayas, if we're living in Calcutta or Delhi or Goran? How do we live this? And that's the question. But I think it's important to remember, for those of us who are really seeking God in this lifetime, in the middle of a very rajasic, distracting environment, that we chose this. And we didn't just choose it for ourselves, but we chose it because it can help people find the way to live in an urban environment, to have a job and a family and, all the problems we all have, but nevertheless, to make the search for God the central core of our lives. And so it's up to all of us to help people to see that and to keep giving them encouragement and inspiration and tools and techniques so that the world at large can do it. Because what our line of gurus came, not just for a few, they came for the world. This was a world mission. And this is just the beginning of the world mission. And I just am so grateful to all of my Guru Bhais watching and in India throughout that beautiful, beautiful country that we love so much, that you are helping to further Master's mission. We see more and more our centers led by all of you, led by people who have come to the path in the last 10, 15 years, and that you're sharing these teachings, because it's really the ability to stay centered in yourself in the midst of crashing worlds. As Master said, the yogi can stand unshaken in the midst of crashing worlds. And that's what we have to do, each one of us. And, I'll just close and then we can have more of a discussion. But I want to do a disclaimer here, because sometimes said, oh, your lives are so easy. You live in this beautiful, idyllic, spiritual community. But, that's nobody's life is easy. Everyone's life has, so as Christ said in the Bible, sufficient unto the day are the stresses thereof. And everyone's life has stress, but it's how we learn to deal with it. And I'll just close by, again, something a friend of mine told me today. She was just diagnosed with what may be advanced cancer. They don't know yet. And I was talking with her today and I said, how are you doing? She's a very deep, lifelong devotee. And she just said, the benefits I've gained spiritually already from this experience are worth anything that happens. And I thought, wow, that's the consciousness of the devotee. And that's what we all have to strive for. So with those opening thoughts, let's see if you have questions you want to ask us, and who passes the baton.
Right. But I'll just add very briefly that if we look at our line of gurus, they specifically are teaching us by their model and what they say that you don't have to withdraw from society in order to find God. In this age, that the finding of God needs to be done where you are. And each of them lived in a big city, with the exception of Babaji, who knows where he lives. You can't really even pin him down. But Lahiri and Varanasi and Sri Yukteswar in the outskirts of Calcutta, and Yogananda chose one of the biggest cities in the West, Los Angeles, to live in. So they were modeling for us that you can carry on a deep God-centered life even in the midst of a city. Okay.
Thank you, Jyotish and Devi. As you said, we have all the tools and techniques from the great masters, and many of us practice daily, and that helps certainly. And yet there are days that we feel that, yes, we can do this. And then there are days that, oh no, it's not working. So do you have any tips or suggestions that when we feel that we are not doing that great, what can we do, or what can we keep in mind?
Okay, well, it's a very good question and pertinent to all devotees. First of all, I would say that sometimes we just have to persevere. There's no other way. If you think of it this way. If at your job, let's say that you have a job that you have to go to the office. If you only went on those days where you really felt like going to the office, oh, it's going to be so wonderful to be there and do my work. Oh, I think I'll go today. If you only went on those days, you would not have a job for very long. And so just like with a job, we have to persevere in our primary job of trying to find our own higher self. So that's the first thing. The second is, what is it that is challenged when we begin to not want? It generally is our willpower. And so sometimes our willpower has just been stressed. Often people will find that toward the end of the week, their willpower, they call it willpower fatigue, and it's an actual thing. Lawyers know to try to avoid getting a decision from the judge on a Friday, especially a Friday afternoon, because the judge is tired of making decisions, and therefore he will just won't really consider very much. And so it's our willpower that comes under challenge. And so sometimes during those times when our willpower is challenged, other than actually persevering, that is showing up for our meditation, it's not the time to try to feel that we have to push ourselves really hard. During those times, try more relaxation. Try some inner chanting or outer chanting. Maybe do some visualizations. Instead of really trying to intensely meditate, then try to kind of relax with Hong Sa or one of the other techniques. But Swami Kriyananda put it this way: it's like fishing. Sometimes you can reel the fish in. That is, sometimes your willpower and your environment allows you to really make effort. Other times that fish is running, and if you make an effort, you're going to break the line. And so at other times you need to let the fish run, and it will tire. So our unwillingness will tire, and then we can begin again reeling in. So I would say during those times when we're feeling discouraged, perseverance is needed, but then relaxation. The third thing that is really helpful at those times is try to be around other devotees, because satsang, other people's energies will help pick you up, even when your willpower has flagged a little bit.
Yeah, it's a challenge that each of us face. Thank you, Jyotish. That was a very good answer. Again, today, in our morning, a Saturday morning, we had we do this once a year. We have this wonderful all community work day. And there were, 300 people, a lot of guests. And Jyotish and I were talking to this one young man who also he's here for 2 weeks, just a brand new devotee from San Francisco. And he was very enthusiastic. And he said, I just learned how to meditate, and I made a vow. I'm going to meditate every day for the 2 weeks, the next 2 weeks. And I looked at him and I said, me too. And he said, yeah, but you'll probably go on beyond that. And I said, I hope so. But it's, when we first come on the path, one can think of it as like the honeymoon. It's like, oh, we're enthusiastic and we want to meditate and we think we can find God, tomorrow if we just try real hard. And then little by little, the slogging starts, and we start, then we have to just draw on willpower, but also a life commitment. Say, Master, if you come to me, if you don't come to me, if I never make progress in meditation, I am with you. I am not going anywhere. And you just make that life commitment. And maybe sometimes your meditations are better or worse, or you're just falling asleep or daydreaming. Sometimes they can be very focused, but those the little waves of, kind of intensity of meditation, just ride those out. But the most important thing is just to make a life commitment and just to say, however far I get in this life, I'm not measuring, but I'm staying the course. And once you make that firm commitment, it kind of is easier because you don't have to evaluate, well, should I, shouldn't I, shouldn't I? You've already made the decision. And you made it, when we take the discipleship vow to Master and our line of gurus, we can do it casually. We can do it, just in kind of the spur of the moment, or we can do it with a deep life commitment and just say, Master, you have found me in this lifetime. I will not leave you. I cling to your feet. Bring me to God. And so I think a life commitment is a very, very important thing. And then secondarily, I think just to, in your meditation, just to realize that God's doing it. We're not doing it. I often, when I get, to be honest, when I get frustrated in meditation, I try to come back to that chant, all the doors do open themselves, all the lights do light themselves. So just remember, God, you're in charge. I'm doing my best. I cannot, by my own efforts, break through the bonds of ego, but with your grace. So just to life commitment and understanding that it's really the guru. Just remember, Swami tells this story briefly in the path. In the beginning, when he was with Master, he was trying so hard, and he felt himself making some progress. And then one of the devotees told Swami that Master commented, "Look how I've changed Walter." So that's what he called Swami. So who is making the effort? It was good that Swami tried. I'm not saying don't try, but ultimately remember that it's the true transformation is we draw the grace of God through our own commitment and our own devotion.
Thanks. Thank you. And I do agree, and I could, a lot of them have this exhausted, willpower during the end of the week or even every day in the evening. But another question we received was about faith being tested. Like they say that I go to office and most of them, 99% of them, they don't see God in the truest sense there. And the faith and devotion which I am trying to cultivate is being tested and sometimes also being discouraged in the office or in the outer world. And even for some devotees, they feel that I have been on the path for so many years, but I'm actually where I started. So the faith sometimes gets shaken up. So how to deal with that? How to reinforce that faith on God and gurus?
Yes, it's a very common problem. There's no really simple answer. I would say, first of all, most people find that meditation in the morning is longer and deeper than in the evening. So if that's true for you who are participating, then try to be especially committed to making that morning meditation, and try to build it into your habit pattern. Habits are very helpful. Devi and I get up, we energize, and then go into the meditation.
We make a cup of tea.
Make a cup of tea. Yes, we're tea drinkers. So we make a cup of tea, and we energize, go into the meditation room. On occasion, we slip into the very bad habit of looking at emails before we meditate, and then we catch ourselves. No, that's not a helpful.
It's a rabbit hole.
The rabbit hole, exactly. So, but the point here is get into a habit that actually works for you. and try to be regular. If you go to bed at relatively the same time at night and get up at the same time in the morning, your energy begins to adapt to that, and you're actually much better off. There are many psychological studies around that. But try to make your morning meditation the pole star, the key stone of your spiritual life. And try, if you can, while your willpower is still strong in the morning, to try to go as deep as you can. The more you can go deep in that one time in the day, and then if you're having difficulty with your faith, then talk to Divine Mother, talk to Master. They're your friend. They know what's going on. In fact, they put you in or not put you, your karma has put you in whatever circumstances you're in. They understand that. They know that. And so talk to them like a friend. The more you make God your friend, the more faith becomes something like friendship, as opposed to, oh, I have to rise up and I have to always keep my mind on God, and if I don't, we get into such conundrums. Just try to think of God more as a good friend that you enjoy being with. As we do that, as we relax into it, the faith will grow. Then the other things, Master has given us affirmations that help with it, prayers that help with it, chants that help. All of these tools will help, along with, as I mentioned earlier, satsang. All of those things help in balancing out the negative magnetism that we're going to face when we go off to work.
Okay, thank you, Jyotish. And then the final thought on this topic, it's two things. One, we shouldn't wear our devotion on our shirt sleeve. You should keep your devotion and your faith and your even your spiritual path. Keep it. If you're with worldly people, don't talk about it. Keep it to yourself. They won't understand. They'll just mock it and belittle it. I've had that experience with visiting family members who are trying to make fun of my spiritual life and so forth. And you just learn not to say very much about it because they don't really understand. So if you're in a work environment surrounded by people that are worldly, which most of us are, just try to, again, keep your spiritual life into your eyes, but also try to see the best in each of them. Like, oh, this person has such a clear mind. This person is always hardworking. This person has a big vision of what things, try, if you relate to the highest in each person, then you're lifting your own consciousness in relationship to them instead of them pulling you down with their materialism, you see? And so to see the light in everyone, and it's a wonderful practice, whoever you're with. If you're with devotees, it's easy to see the light shining in them, but God's light is in everyone. You don't have to try to proselytize and convert them, but just relate. When you're relating with very worldly people, try to keep centered at the spiritual eye, keep your consciousness there, and relate from your spiritual eye to their spiritual eye. So in other words, relate to the light within them, relate to their higher qualities. And you could, I was speaking to a young man recently who was just promoted to a position of manager. And there's some very difficult people he was sharing with us in his work environment. And I asked him, how's it going? And he said, it's going pretty well. I'm trying to make every person in that work environment feel valued and that I am on their side. And he said, it's changing the whole culture of that office. So again, in a difficult worldly environment, at least we can, if we can't relate spiritually, we can relate to the highest human values in each person, because everyone has something. Even if it's a little bitty, like Master tells the story of the woman in hell who just was so selfish, but once she had given a rotten carrot to a beggar, and that was her ticket out of hell. So anyway, I think you know the story, but everyone has some goodness in them. Try to relate to the goodness in all people and really bless them, that you can change without ever saying a word. You can change the work environment if you try to just relate to others in that way.
Thank you. Another question that often comes up is more of the dilemma within ourselves. That is, we have this spiritual life, spiritual aspiration, but at the same time, we have aspirations or ambitions in the world, in our career or in our family, and how to keep both, and also to have that aspiration in the world, ambition in the world. Is it how much is too much? Where do we stop? Where should we stop? Do you have some thoughts on this?
It's a very interesting question, and there's actually a relatively simple answer. The problem is not in knowing what to do, it's in being able to do what you know you should do. So first of all, we should understand that God doesn't want us not to be successful. If we can't find success in what we're doing in the world, we probably can't find success in what we're doing spiritually either. So God wants us to succeed. If we're in a position where we're earning money, that is not a bad thing. It's not bad to earn money. It's not bad even to be wealthy. What's bad is to be attached or selfish. And so if we're earning money, Master's most advanced disciple was probably also his richest devotee, Rajarsi Janakananda. And he was rich enough to have his own private golf course in Kansas City. So a very wealthy person. So, but what Master said about Rajarsi was that he was, in a certain sense, he was carrying on the material necessity of the work, just as Master was carrying on the spiritual necessity, because Rajarsi gave a great deal. Whenever Master asked him for money, I'm going to India, can you help? The devotees in India need money. Can you help pay off this bill? Rajarsi was always forthcoming. And so Rajarsi had dedicated, he had understood that his material means, his material wealth, allowed him to help be a vital part of the work. We have many people in India who understand this principle very well and are very supportive of the work in India. So the point here is that success is not the problem. It's attachment or it's selfishness. But then the other thing that we have to watch out for is that success is one thing, but driving for more and more and more, well beyond what we need, is not helpful. So, one of the niyamas of Patanjali is non-greed. So essentially what Patanjali is saying is don't yearn for more than what you need. Then it becomes greed. If up until that time it's need, then it becomes greed. And so for people who are in a position where they're earning good money and having a worldly success, there comes a point at which they need to shift and put more energy, even at the cost of some worldly success, put more energy into their spiritual life. Master often wrote his second most advanced disciple was a man named Yogacharya Oliver Black. Again, a very wealthy industrialist. He was in Detroit and he was part of the auto industry. Later on, Master wrote him very regularly saying, pull back on business. You've made enough success. You've made enough money. Just let that go now. See if you can't sell your business and just spend your time, because Yogacharya was also a wonderful teacher, attracted lots and lots of students on the path of Kriya Yoga. Yoganandas said to him, now's the time to let go of business and concentrate on your spiritual life. So I pass that on as advice from Yogananda to all of us. Material success is fine if you use the success properly, if you don't get attached and don't get greedy. But there does come a time, especially later on in life, when it's time to let go and not be driven by the habitual busyness that is needed for success to change that habit pattern. Often it's good to honestly, at a certain point, I would suggest, if a person can, to take a month or 2 or even 3 months spiritual sabbatical, just to break that momentum of always being busy. And I've known people that stay at it and can't make the transition, and then finally take a sabbatical, especially if they're in a spiritual environment. And then they wonder, it's almost like waking from a dream. What was I doing? Just continuing all that energy.
Good, Jyotish, thank you. You know, you made a comment there, Jyotish, which I think should be highlighted as a very useful tool. When we're asking the question, how much is enough, how much is too much, we should have a little, whether we created actually physically or just virtually in our minds, a need to greed scale. And just where does the needle fall? Is this, am I way big? If it's a little more than I need, maybe I'll share that with others. If it's way more than I need, am I doing it just for what people think of me, ego-grandizement? But use that need to greed scale to kind of evaluate. But, you know, it's interesting. I was thinking about this question, and I've known people devotees who had nothing to their name. There was once, I remember we were having a community meeting here, and one of the members was saying, we need to all get life insurance because we just need to, and the community should provide us life insurance because we don't know when we get older. And there was a very humble man there. In fact, many of you may know him. It's Nitai, who's living in Gurgaon, working with the Education for Life project. And Nitai is a very quiet, humble man, and just spent his whole life in service. And Nitai, so this fellow was just saying, we need to have financial security. And people were getting a little confused. And Nitai just said, you know, I've given my life to God. If Divine Mother wants me to live under a bridge with a shopping cart to my name, then I'm contented. I'm not going to try to plan my future for my own security. And as soon as he said that, everyone got realigned. It's like, God will take care of us. And then on the other side, I've known people, devotees of extreme wealth. And it's interesting because the devotees of living with nothing and the devotees of extreme wealth, there's the ones I know, there's a very similar quality they both share. And that's really non-attachment to worldly goods.
And they don't think too much about
money. And they don't
money.
think too much about money, either one, both ends of the spectrum. It's the people in the middle that get caught. You're like, well, if I make a little more and then my family will be secure. It's a valid thing. We don't, if we have children, we don't want them to be left wanting. But at the same time, again, it's attachment. Why are we doing this? And, if we're running a business, if there's a choice of making it bigger, but if the thought in our mind is, oh, I'll get more money, then that's spiritual death. But if the thought is, if I build this business, more people can have jobs, they can have security, they can have better income, all these things, then that's a good course to pursue. So it all comes down to one very simple thing. What part of my consciousness is being energized by my striving for success? If it's the desire, the desire to help others, then that's spiritually a valid and helpful approach. If the motivation is to just have one more car, one more whatever, then it's detrimental.
Another question we had from our friend was about surrender. So she says that, well, every day morning after meditation, I say to God and gurus, I surrender myself to you. But during the day, sometimes I have a question. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to surrender this moment to him? Or have I actually surrendered? So that is a question which is like, on a moment by moment basis, how shall I work on surrendering myself or attuning myself to his will? So if you could share a few thoughts on that.
Okay. Well, first of all, let's ask the question, when we say I surrender myself to you, what are we surrendering? We're not surrendering wealth. He already has the wealth. We're not surrendering, basically, without going through the laundry list of it's not this, it's not that. All we're surrendering, all we can surrender to God is our attachment to being, staying in egoic limitation. And that's what we're trying to give to God. We're trying to say, I want now to have union with you. I want to break out of the delusion that I'm separate from you. And so that's what we're surrendering. And so during the day, we can also, it's concentration on work isn't any more egoic than concentration in meditation. Concentration with attachment at work is not. So if we're during the day, we should just try to give whatever we're doing to God and say, I'll do my best. I'm here in this environment, in this space, with this job. I'll do my best, but I give it to you, God. Just trying not to be attached. I'll relate a very interesting dream that I had just 2 nights ago. So in the dream, I was looking at a park with beautiful grass and children were playing, and there were dogs running around, and just a very nice scene in a park with a lot of people. And all of a sudden, I started laughing because in the dream, it occurred to me, Divine Mother, it's you playing all of these parts. You're the children, you're the dogs, you're the green grass, you're me, the dreamer. And as I had that thought, the scene, the park, it was as if I receded a little bit and I could see that it was all on a movie screen. And so the whole thing that I was caught up in being entranced in was just a movie that was playing. But what broke that was to say, it's all you, Divine Mother. So during the day, if we can just remember occasionally to say, this work is yours, Divine Mother, I give it to you. These relationships, I give everything to you. So that surrender doesn't have to be contained just for the meditation time.
And also just moment by moment, you know, just to say, I'm not attached to the outcome of things. I will do my best to accomplish what I think you want me to do. But if things go awry, if things don't turn out the way I want, then I am here to serve you, and I'm not attached by my likes and my dislikes. This is what the outcome has to be. And I know when I pray, I have learned in praying for other people, if you pray for a specific outcome, in a way, you block the flow of grace. But if you just pray for God's light to surround that person, to be with them. You know, at one time there was a friend who wanted to get into a certain college and I was praying for that. It didn't come about. Years passed and I came to see that probably would not have been a good thing for that to happen for that person. But just to offer, just to say, I'm not trying to control by my likes and dislikes, by my attachment, but I'm just in this dream of yours, as Jyotish was speaking, Divine Mother. I'm in this dream. I will play my part well, but I'm not trying to control or to change the outcome of events. I'm just living the life that you gave me. And, you know, I also want to mention, because we haven't gotten to this and people have asked a question about finding God in the middle of family life. And that's an important question that many people have to deal with. And it's not antithetical. Being married and having a family, God can equally be found there. Lahiri Mahashaya demonstrated that beautifully for us. And so we shouldn't use any outward circumstances as an excuse for not finding God. Oh, I can't meditate because I have children. Well, you figure out when you can meditate. Jyotish and I raised a child, and it changed. I had been meditating regularly for 6 years before I had a child, and it changed the pattern of my meditation, but I never abandoned it. And then life goes on and things change and you have more time at your disposal. But just, again, it comes down to life commitment. If you're waiting for the circumstances in your life, be it a totally harmonious work environment or a totally quiet, calm home environment, if you're waiting for the circumstances to be perfect before you can meditate or pursue a spiritual life, you may wait a long time. But if you just say, God, I love this quote of Master's, wherever you have put me, it is on that spot where I can find God. And just live your life that way.
For that answer. And a question just popped up. A person was asking online that I'm a doctor, so the outcome of treatment is important. So how to go about it? I mean, I have to be attached to the outcome. So I am attached to the outcome that the patient should be fine. So how can I, become detached?
Right. That's a good question. There are many things that within this dream world are very important. We can't just say, oh, it's all a dream and dismiss any responsibility. We're in the dream. And so being in the dream, we have to do our very best in the doctor to try to relieve pain or to effect the healing. That's a very important kind of service. So God is using your skill as a doctor as a channel to try to help people. So yes, you should try to do your very best to use your skills to remove pain or affect the healing. But also remember that ultimately these things are in God's hands. That yes, we're the channel, but we're not, one could say we're not responsible for the outcome. That's one of the primary teachings of Nishkam Karma in the Gita and in the teachings of India, is that we do have to act in this world. We do have to do our very best, but We should not be attached to the results of our actions. If we can find that balance, and non-attachment doesn't mean that we don't want to try to relieve pain. Of course we do. But if it doesn't happen, then we need to accept that as, if we've done our best, we need to accept the results as being God's will. And Devi earlier was mentioning about praying for people. It is similar to being a doctor. Here we're trying to be a spiritual help, often for someone's health or well-being. We should do our best. We should pray diligently, but honestly, prayer and our attempt to do healing has its own intelligence. And so if we intrude too much our will on it, it removes the intelligence that is innate in the prayer itself. And in her case, praying that this person get into a college may not have been the best prayer. Praying for the very highest thing to happen for that person, for the best result, and especially the best result spiritually, that would be a better and higher prayer. And that may indeed be what did happen. And so for a doctor to be too attached to healing, obviously he has to try his best, or she has to try their best, but to be too attached to the result of that healing, it may be the person's karma that they need to go through pain. Maybe they're burning off something. Maybe they need to have an experience. Now, we obviously don't want to be the instrument of that, but if it happens and we've done our best, then we should accept that as God's will, and we should do our best to be in tune with God's will in whatever we do.
Yeah, it's, I remember when we were in Delhi last fall, we had a satsang at the Panchil Ashram, and there was a young man, I hope he's still attending, who is a doctor, and during the pandemic, and he was sharing how difficult it was, terribly demoralizing to be a doctor when there was no oxygen, no medication, no even beds, and he just said he was so discouraged. And then he found our ashram in Panchil, started meditating, and he said it saved his life because he was able to detach and just try to say, whatever happens here, I can't control. He said essentially what they were doing before was just comforting people as they were dying. And he said nothing changed outwardly, but I could handle it better. And so again, to being a doctor, I think it's so vitally important to see God as your invisible silent partner. So if you're a surgeon, when someone's life is at stake for a very fine little precise incision that you make, just to think, God, you are making this with me. You are guiding my hand. If you're trying to find the right medication, inspire me, God. Let me have the right insight on what can help this person. But just to feel you are practicing medicine with God, through God, and for God.